Can I get a thumbs up from folks that you can see what I see? Strategic plan. Okay, great. All right, so here we are. Got some housekeeping for folks who just came in. If you are able to use the QR code to check in, please do so. After the end of the workshop, I'm going to send a feedback form for all of you so that we can improve this workshop for the next group that comes through. So checking in will allow you to just automatically get that feedback form. Before we get too far into things, I want to do a quick poll to see how y'all are feeling about goal setting in the strategic plan space. And so I want to share. And this is, you know, less than perfect as a scale, but it does give me an opportunity to just kind of do a quick and dirty. How are you all feeling about articulating strategic goals? So you all should see the poll up on your screen and seconds to gauge where you are. I always think confidence scales are interesting because what's the difference between not at all confident and somewhat confident and confident, but there's all sorts of space in between. I'm going to force you to choose so we can start to see where we are as a group in this space. Okay, I think we've got everybody participated. So I'm going to share the results with all of you. Can you all see that poll here? Great. So looks like most folks are coming to us with, you know, yeah, somewhat confident. Like this isn't necessarily brand new information. Got a few folks who are not feeling confident at all, and one very confident individual today. And you know, this helps me kind of see where we're all starting and how we're feeling. And one thing that I want to make sure you all hear before we move ahead is that regardless of your confidence, when we go through the goal setting process, it still requires any of us, regardless of how great we think we are at this, to go through the steps. And so what we're going to focus on today are the steps. And hopefully, regardless of your confidence, you're able to feel like at the end you've gotten to a good place. The last thing that I wanted to do in the housekeeping space is, see, what did it just do for me? Oh, can you guys see my presentation still? Better? Okay. Is to let you know that there is a worksheet packet that I created for all of you to go along with this workshop. It's available in a couple different spaces. So there's a Word document, if you all need a Word document, on the campus groups page. You can go to documents and download it there. The other space, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can get you the link. The other space is I do have a Google Doc for you all. So the Google Doc is view only, and you should be able to make a copy and use the Google Doc for the rest of the workshop. Let me know if you have trouble accessing any of the resources. But I also want to let you know if you're not in a place to pull up multiple documents during this workshop, the slides are going to show you the questions that go that are on the worksheet. So if you don't want to have the worksheet open, you just want to listen or watch, you can do that as well. So no panicking needed here, but do let me know if you're having trouble accessing the slides, or I'm sorry, the worksheet. It's always fun choreographing these workshops with the various sources. Okay, so I'm going to pull back up our slideshow here. And so I recommend you get the goal setting worksheet packet open if you're able to do so. And then today we're going to focus on, I'm going to make sure we're all up to speed on the strategic plan process and definitions. Many of you had participated in the meetings where I was at the directors group meetings with the AVCs. And so I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did in that meeting, but if you weren't present for any of those meetings, feel free to ask questions. We're going to do a pre-goal setting brainstorm activity. Then we're going to walk through the techniques of articulating a goal and do some practice on articulating goals. And we'll have some time to share and receive feedback. And then I'll make sure you all hear the next steps and a little bit about the submission process. I already talked through some of the outcomes for today, but these will be the outcomes that I'll be particularly interested in knowing if we accomplished when you get the feedback form. I'll be asking you specifically if you agree that we accomplished these. And please be honest. I don't have a lot of ego in this. My goal is to be effective. And so if you feel like something could have been better, please do let me know. All right, so diving right in, the strategic plan process is something that you all in the division have been working on for well over a year now. Many of you may have participated in the advisory group, and I'm sure all of you in some way, shape, or form have contributed ideas to where we're headed as a division and how we're going to get there. And so, the product of all of that work has been the articulation of a vision, mission, values, and then these pillars for the division that really help us focus our work as a division for the next couple of years. I know that the group that worked on these phases really strived to make sure that everybody saw themselves, at least in some places of this strategic plan. And the hope is that as we move into this next stage, every unit is able to articulate at least one goal that maps to at least one pillar of the strategic plan. Of course, many in the meetings that we've had prior to this, we've talked about, is one goal acceptable? And we've really left that up to you all, your teams, and your supervisors to determine what's a reasonable amount of goals. But on a division level, we're really just asking for one. Because strategic plans have a lot of jargon, I think it's always helpful to remind y'all of what we mean when we say values, vision, mission, and pillars. The pillars are our strategic focus for the next several years, and our goals should be mapping to those foci. And as a reminder, we have a strategic plan page on the Student Affairs webpage. So if you're wondering, specifically what the mission is and what the vision and how we articulated that, you can reference that there. But I didn't want to spend too much time talking about that today, so we can get right into the goals. I did, for your visual awareness, if you don't have the worksheet open, wanted to make sure that you could see briefly what the pillars were, so you can have them in your mind as we're talking through the next phases. But again, these are our 6 areas of focus for the next couple of years. And the goal is that everyone can see themselves and their units in this work. So when we talk about articulating goals, I had shared with the previous groups that I had met with, but I want to reiterate it again. It's going to sort of set us off today. Is the goals need to be smart. They need to be smart in order for us to be able to make sure they happen, right? It's easy to say, well, I really want to increase the retention rate of my students. But if you've not talked about what that means, how you would do that, if you've not thought through whether or not you have the resources, then it's probably not the most appropriate goal to be putting your unit out there to accomplish. But the process of articulating a SMART goal, I see it as a checklist, and also kind of guiding pathway to making sure that we're writing goals that we can hold ourselves accountable to and that we can accomplish. And then my my first kind of main tip is don't dive right in. It's easy to say I know how to write a goal. I'll show you the Mad Libs kind of thing here in a second. It's easy to just plop some things in and consider it done, but the process is really what matters more. The goal is the product of that process you go through to articulating the goal, but thinking through why you're setting a goal and how you're going to accomplish it is really the kind of core purpose of why you would even go through the process of articulating a goal. And then just a reminder, in case folks are, kind of forgetting or haven't heard this yet, you are not required to write a goal for each pillar. The worksheet does set out section by section for pillars, so you can kind of zoom in on each of those pillars, but you do not have to write a goal that maps to each individual pillar. I just want to make sure you all heard that one more time. All right, we're going to dive into an activity here. So our first activity is the pre-goal setting brainstorm. So, like I said in the last slide, brainstorm before you start writing a goal. So what I might ask you all to do is pick one pillar for your unit to start. Just kind of hone in on one. Maybe it's the one you feel your unit most aligns with, or maybe it's the one that you've been marinating on, but you're not really sure what you want to accomplish in that area. So I'll leave that up to you all to choose, but pick one pillar to start. We're going to take about 5 minutes to work through writing down our answers to these questions on our own. So if you aren't in a space where you can open up the worksheet, I would grab a piece of paper and just start jotting down your answers. And I'm going to go on mute, but I'm available for questions in the chat. And I'm going to give us 5 minutes and then we'll check in and see how we're doing. If we need a little more time, we can spend some more time after that. All right. Is everyone good? Cool. Are we feeling like we might want some more time? Maybe give me a thumbs up if you feel like you're ready to move on. How about we take 1 or 2 more minutes? It's like some folks might want time. And then for those of you who are ready to move on, start thinking about maybe a draft of a goal or a topic. So if you're not ready to write out the goal, that's okay. We're going to get to that next. But if in your brainstorm, there were things that came up that were pretty clear, where would we go next? Or you could already think through and imagine how you would accomplish this, then I would pick the one that's easiest for today, because it's always easier to practice when you've got a simple example in mind, and then you can advance into more complex goals. But start to think about one goal or idea that you'd like to use for the remaining time to work through the steps of. So at the bottom of the worksheet, you have an example of the Mad Libs piece. So start, kind of drafting a goal and start with your unit, name, and what you'll be aspiring to do over the next couple of years. And then we should be ready to move into the next part. All right, so hopefully that gave folks a little bit more time. We're going to move into the next phase because, again, you can always come back to these questions later and spend some more time on your own or with your teams thinking through the answers to these questions. These questions as a brainstorm can be a great way of doing, kind of individually as a team, and then coming together as a team and seeing where you have consistency and where you have variance. That can be a great way of kind of gauging where you all are. Are you on the same page already, or do you need to do some work to maybe align yourselves more clearly? So this brainstorm is just a primer, but it can be a great way of getting up and running in the goal setting process. So that's the purpose of that. All right, so now I want to talk through some basic techniques for writing a goal. This is an example and is also in the worksheet packet. It's the very last page. You have a space with these questions and a space to answer those questions. But one of the things that I like to do when I'm setting SMART goals is after doing the brainstorm, like I said, I start to jot down some things that I'm like, okay, I've got some, kind of a breadth of great ideas, but I can clearly see which ones I'm really hungry for, or I know are really going to push my unit in a positive direction, or are really going to be things that I'm able to accomplish because it aligns with other strategic priorities or other initiatives. I know the, president's budget just came out yesterday, and we can see where some of our division-wide priorities may align with some of the funding that's been made available. So thinking about all the pieces that you all know as the area expert and the expert in your field, start with an idea of a goal, and then you're going to start to answer the questions that are on this slide related to that loosely articulated goals. You don't need to have written a perfect goal yet, but you should have an idea in mind. These questions you see here, I just want to make very clear, these questions are widely available online. SMART goals align with a particular theory of planning, and any basic Google search is going to come up with a resource like this. And it's going to allow you to see different kinds of questions related. People use SMART goals for personal, professional development or personal development. You can use these questions in a lot of varying different kinds of environments for goal setting. And so, I've adapted these questions to be specific to the division's, kind of task at hand. But these are questions that are not, exclusive to us as a university, and any other way that you might be trying to apply SMART goals in the future, you can find lots of resources available online that give you prompts like this. And so a lot of times when I'm doing goal setting, depending on what I'm being asked to set goals around, I'll do kind of an initial search and find templates and resources that really align with the context I'm thinking through. It just makes my brain have to do less work around the articulating of the goal if the prompt questions already fit the field or the area that we're thinking about. So one technique that I recommend after you've gone through this brainstorming activity is starting to answer the questions on this slide more specifically. It will help you start to realize if you're going to be able to check all these boxes at the end. So you may be able to answer all of them except for the letter A, and you might start to realize this really isn't achievable within the time frame we're thinking about. This is like a 10 to 15-year goal. If you get to those phases with any of these questions, what I would recommend you do is you take a step back and think about, is this goal still a high priority for me? And what are some smaller goals that I could set that would still help me move in that direction? It's not going to be realistic for me to accomplish a particular goal within 2 to 3 years, but if I know where I want to be 5 to 10 years from now, I may be able to articulate a goal that is achievable and realistic within, these next 2 to 3 years, and I'll be able to map it to the strategic plan. So it's sort of an iterative process in that you're going to start with your draft goal and start to test it out with these questions. You may realize you need to back up and do that phase all over again. But it should help you start to move through the process to articulating that succinct 1 sentence or 2 sentence goal at the end of it all. Any questions on that? Nope. And then I don't know if you all remember Mad Libs. Apparently they still make them, and I got really excited. When I was trying to figure out if Mad Libs was 1 word or 2, I Googled it. I was like, oh my gosh, they're all over the place still. So excited. But in a lot of strategic planning spaces, there are Mad Lib type formats that you can just sort of plug your work into, and it'll make it sure for you that you've articulated something that's going to look similar to what everyone else is submitting. I've provided some examples. These are not necessarily things that these units are doing, or they're absolutely not recommendations from me that they are things that these units should be doing, but they are articulated in a format that I think gives hopefully a sense of what this looks like when you get down to that 1 or 2 sentence articulated strategic goal. And the first 2 examples, I want to highlight that in the first 2 examples, you don't see numbers per se, right? And in the last goal, you see a couple different numbers. And I want to acknowledge that as you're working through your units goals, there are going to be some that are going to be really easy to put numbers to, right? But if you can't, it doesn't mean it's not a worthy goal. A lot of the work that we do in student affairs is really difficult to measure in the way that you might see on that last example. If we're in units that are really time bound, or we have, year over year cycles, then, we may be able to articulate some yield or some target that we can really measure quite easily. The first two examples, I think, are actually a lot more commonplace in a lot of our units where we're saying we're going to add something, or we're going to reduce something, or we're going to improve upon something. And what I would encourage you to do at this phase in the goal setting is to just be okay with knowing what direction you're headed in this goal. Are you trying to grow something? Um, like I said, reduce something or sunset a program? Are you trying to improve or assess how things are going? Um, that's going to help you then again move into the later phases of, well, how would you know if you've improved it? How would you know if um, sunsetting something allowed you to free up resources for the thing you were looking for? So it's okay if in that one sentence you're using a verb that's not tied to a number. But the goal is to have it be action oriented, so you can be articulating what direction you're headed with these ideas. All right. So our next activity that we're going to spend about 10 minutes on is also in your worksheet packet. But if you don't have the packet over, this is what you're going to do here. You're going to start with a draft of your goal. So take a stab at writing a goal. Sorry, did I cut out for a minute? Yeah, okay. I can tell when my face slows down. So you're going to take a stab at writing your goal. Like I said earlier, it can be really broad. It doesn't have to be measurable. Don't worry about that at this point. And you're going to start working through the letters of the acronym SMART. I will pull the questions back up for folks who don't have the worksheet open, so that you can do it on a separate sheet of paper if you need to. And then at the end, so you're going to have, kind of your draft of a goal. You're going to work through the letters SMART, get through as much as you can. And the idea is that at the end, you're revising your goal, pulling from the answers that you provided to those questions. So when you use the Mad Lib template, if that works for you, you should be able to put words into those brackets that align with the questions or the answers to those questions. Again, like I recommended, start with something that you're already feeling is easy to think about, or you could kind of in your mind see the path to, because of course, certain goals can be really complex, and I'm happy to work through those with you all individually or offline, or kind of after this. And if you know where you're headed and you really, this is what I want to spend my time on, and I want Laura to help me make sure I've got this articulated properly, I can absolutely do that. It's going to probably be a little more advanced than what we're aiming to accomplish today with this workshop. So do your best. And if you get all the way to the end of the acronym, go ahead and start taking a stab at revising your goal. After this activity, we're going to start taking a look at some of the goals that people have articulated and getting feedback on it. And messy is okay. So don't worry if you're just feeling like, here's what it is, and I know it needs work. That's what we're here to do. So I'm going to pull the SMART questions back up on the slide for you all. I'm going to give you 10 minutes, but I'm going to check in at 5 minutes and see how we're doing. And if folks need a couple more minutes, let me know. Or if you want the full 5, we can spend the next 10 minutes doing that. I just want to make sure that we're moving along at a pace that you all need. So again, I'm going to go on mute, chat me if you all have any questions or issues, and I will move back to the sheet with the prompts and have fun. I will put the link to the document back up for folks. The Google Doc link, you'll want to make a copy, and then you should be able to edit it. And then for in case folks need it, there is also a Word version on the campus groups page for student affairs assessment. if you have any issues accessing anything. How are we doing? Do folks want a little bit more time? Maybe thumbs up for feeling like we can move on. All right. Give me a second to get my window back up anyway. So, all right. Well, let's move into the last days. I want to make sure we kind of stay on time so folks can move on to their next meetings if they have them. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and I'm going to open up a whiteboard. And if folks haven't used whiteboard yet on Zoom, I was in a meeting the other day and a lot of folks had not used the whiteboard feature. So forgive me if this is elementary to all of you, but the whiteboard feature on Zoom is interactive. And so you should be able to, once I open the board, you should be able to just click on it on your Zoom screen as though you're writing on a whiteboard. So let me know if folks are able to do so. I see Ellen on there. So yeah, so you should be able to just click on there and then you've got a bunch of options. So what we're going to do next is I'd like folks to go to this left-hand side and create a text box and write your goal statement in. So go ahead whenever you're ready while I'm talking, start putting your goal statement in there. And there's a couple different ways we can provide feedback for folks. So there's a comment button up here. If you want to kind of like in a Word doc, you highlight something, you put a comment on the side, or in a Google Doc, you can click on it and provide comments for suggestions. I would probably not suggest typing over somebody, but you could create a text box next to it yourself and offer a suggestion. So if you wanted to work on rewriting their goal, you could do so. So go ahead and take, how do we get our name on here? So if you try just, oh, there you are, Laura. I was gonna say, if you try just clicking your name on there, it should show up. And then you should be able to click a text box and just, kind of if you click the T, and then click a box, you should be able to write it. Are folks able to do that? Yeah. So go ahead and take a little bit to put your draft of a goal, if you're ready, on there. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit and see what we can see. And then, y'all let me know if this will be something I'm curious about in the feedback form. There's an open-ended item on the end. If this was really clunky for you, let me know, because there are a couple different ways we could have done this. And I'm hoping this allows us to kind of engage with each other on our goals. But if it's too clunky, then for the next group, I might opt for a Google Doc or something. Let me see, folks have some ideas in here. It's interesting how small we get. And when I'm going to try and make yours bigger. Okay. Seeing everyone's mouse everywhere. Okay. And let me know, I'm looking, I know if folks aren't ready to put their goals in, that's okay. But let me know if you're still working. Can zoom in and start looking at people's goals here. So like I said, there's a couple ways you can provide feedback for folks. If they're done and you're done, you can go ahead and take a look at other people's goals and put some comments on there. I'm going to take a look and I'll probably talk through some thoughts. And folks can unmute and, just say, hey, I'm looking at the SRC's goal and I have a question. If we do it this way, is that how that works? So thanks. Yeah, and if you're on your mobile and you can't access the whiteboard, feel free to share with me your goal either in the chat or afterward, and I can still get you some feedback. Or if you are able to type it out somewhere in the chat, I can help people put it on the whiteboard. So folks, let me know if you need help with things. Happy to do so. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on the student life and leadership team and take a look at that goal. So it says the SLL team will develop a staff engagement work group to explore and implement staff engagement activities or services by spring 2024. Erica, your whiteboard's not working. Do you have any idea why it might not be working? Anyone who's super whiteboard savvy who could help troubleshoot? Or Erica, if you want to put the goal in the chat, I can put it on the whiteboard for you. Okay, so any feedback for the goal about the, oh, I'm so sorry, Erica, I disabled you. That's weird. I'll take a look. So any feedback for this goal, the SLL team will develop a staff engagement work group. Any ideas, thoughts? Any questions? Okay. I think, my thought about this is it's great. I can see where the goal would be taking the team, right? Establishing a work group can be an important part to even knowing what direction you want to head. So I love that it's manageable and it's really clear about where the team is currently and what they'd even need to know in order to explore and implement something different. So I think this is a great example of a SMART goal because it is realistic. And I can imagine some of the steps that you'd be taking to get to that point. And hopefully that once that goal is done, that you'd be ready to set more goals in that area. And so I think that's great. Ellen, do you want to add anything about that?
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something that before my time in student life and leadership, that they had this and it kind of dissolved with staff transitions. And so it's been on the list to revisit and revise. So we've already received some feedback from some of the staff about how they would like to see it modified and evolved. So want to pick that up and of course engage with all staff of what they would like to see and do. But first have a work group that helps us create this. Obviously, if it's for the staff, we want it to make it meaningful and impactful.
Great. Let's look at the SRC. So the SRC will expand the Green Office program to include all DSA units by the end of annual year 2025. So the Green Office program, I'm not familiar with the program yet, Garrett, but I imagine that would be something that you would know what units are already included in the program, that you'd be able to create a list. You'd be able to make steps to know what DSA units are needed, and you'd be able to articulate the pieces, the components to making sure that they're included, and that you know when it's done. And so by expanding, you're probably articulating that expansion would be quantified by the number of units. So I think this is a great SMART goal. It's really clear, and I think I can imagine how you would be moving through the steps. Does anyone have any other feedback on this goal? We've got two more, so if it's okay, we'll go ahead and try and get through them. So I think we have a couple more minutes. So Danny, the Veterans Service Center, will develop an emergency fund application to provide financial support for UCI military connected students in need by the end of the 2023-24 academic year. Any thoughts or comments for Danny? Yeah, I think this is also an excellent example of a SMART goal. You've got the word develop in there, so it's clear to me that it's something that needs to be created or designed. And I imagine that in the smaller components of how you would accomplish this goal, that you would be able to answer whether or not you have the financial support, that this is a means to connecting students to that financial support, or perhaps identifying the financial support might be a sub item that then leads to the emergency fund application. It's specific who it's for, and perhaps how they would qualify in means of a need. And that you've got a date by which you'd be able to look and say, did we get this done? You'd be able to look halfway through and say, where are we? What do we need to accomplish in order to be able to move ahead? Okay, and then I think I saw one more on here. And then that one. So Sandy, I think this one was yours. The International Center's program staff will provide trainings and guidelines for student staff to develop professional and personal skills while as a leader with our center by the end of their roles. So depending on their end dates or by June 2024. So I think this is a great example of a SMART goal. It's got all the components. I think we can probably move some of the words into the steps. I should have started with this one because I think this is a great example of what my goals often look like, that I've got, kind of all the individual pieces there in the sentence. And, but one of the things that we could do probably to improve on this goal is to decide, what do we mean by trainings and guidelines, and spend a little bit of time writing that out or fleshing that out, so that if we want to, kind of hone in on, let's focus just on trainings for this goal, or that the guidelines may be more manageable, that we could break it up into two smaller goals, or perhaps we could decide that the guidelines are part of the trainings. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to provide some kind of suggestions for improvements for all of our goals. This whiteboard will remain available to you all as we, kind of close out the Zoom session. And I'm going to move, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and close the whiteboard and hope that I don't ruin anything, because again, this is when we're using all the multimedia. Want to make sure you guys have a chance to understand the next steps. So by August 1st, each unit should be articulating at least one goal and submitting your goals via the Google form. The Google form is available here. It's also on the campus groups webpage and assessment webpage, and we'll make sure it's on the strategic plan webpage as well. But here's a QR code and a short link to get to it. For folks who are submitting more than one goal, you'll just submit the form more than once. But it's a pretty simple process. And I hope that you all feel, kind of equipped and ready to move ahead. And as always, thank you so much. Like I said on the whiteboard, I'll continue to provide some feedback. I'm available after this if folks want to hang out. I'm going to stop recording the training, but I'm available if people want to stay on and ask questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for your time today, everyone, and thanks for participating in the process. I'm happy to support you.